Mark walked through the wide metal doors of the space station restaurant, his eyes widening at the strange lights and colors inside. The air smelled like nothing he had ever smelled on Earth, a mix of spices, smoke, and something sweet, but unsettling. The walls were lined with glowing panels and the ceiling had tiny floating lights that moved like stars. Mark felt both amazed and nervous. He had heard this restaurant was famous across the galaxy for its exotic dishes, but he never imagined it would look like this. As he moved deeper inside, he noticed diners of all shapes and sizes, some with multiple arms, some with skin that shimmered like liquid metal. They ate quietly, their eyes occasionally glancing at Mark as if measuring him. A server approached him, tall and thin with 4 arms and a calm smile. "Welcome to Zalvora," it said in perfect English. "Are you ready for something unforgettable?" Mark nodded, unsure if he wanted to be unforgettable in this place, but he wanted an adventure. He was seated at a table in the corner, near a small cage. Inside, tiny creatures moved, their eyes wide with fear. Mark thought they were some kind of decoration, part of the restaurant's theme, but a shiver ran down his spine. He tried to focus on the menu, which had words he barely understood. Among the dishes, one stood out. "The rare steak," it said, and a note below promised it was fresh, unlike anything you have tasted. Mark's curiosity grew. He had ordered rare dishes before, but this sounded extraordinary. As he waited for his meal, Mark looked around, noticing the servers moving gracefully, almost floating as they carried plates. The diners ate calmly, without talking, but their eyes were sharp, alert, and somehow cold. Mark felt a strange tension in the room, as if something important was about to happen. He sipped his drink, tasting something sweet and sour, unlike anything he had ever tried. Then he noticed a small movement in the cage. A tiny hand pressed against the bars, just for a moment. He blinked, thinking he had imagined. But the hand moved again, quick and desperate. The server returned and asked, "Are you ready to order your main dish?" Mark swallowed nervously, pointing to the rare steak. The server's smile widened, almost too wide. "Excellent choice, it will be prepared with care," it said, and floated away. Mark tried to calm himself, thinking maybe he was overreacting. Maybe the tiny creatures were just pets or decorations. But a small, uneasy feeling settled in his stomach, one he could not shake. Minutes passed slowly, each tick of the clock louder than the last. Mark watched the kitchen through a small window, seeing strange machines and alien cooks moving quickly. Then the door opened, and the dish arrived, served, on a plate that seemed to glow faintly. Mark's heart raced as he leaned forward, curious and a little afraid. He picked up the utensils, ready to take his first bite. Then he saw it, a small movement under the covering of the dish. He froze, staring, not sure what he was seeing. A tiny alien girl, pale and trembling, her eyes wide and scared, was lying on the plate. Mark's mind refused to accept it. He blinked rapidly, thinking it must be some illusion. But the girl moved again, weakly reaching a hand toward him, and whispered something he could not understand. The room seemed to hold its breath, every diner watching quietly as if nothing unusual was happening. Mark's hands shook, dropping the utensils. He looked around, but no one seemed to notice his shock. The server hovered beside him, calm and smiling. "Do you wish to proceed?" it asked. Mark could not answer. His mind racing, images of the girl, alive and on the plate, burned in his thoughts. He realized then that this place was far more dangerous than he had imagined, and that his decision to order the rare steak might have consequences he could not yet understand. The alien girl looked at him with pleading eyes, tiny lips moving silently. Mark's heart pounded, a mix of fear, disgust, and compassion flooding him. He knew he had to act, but he did not know how. The diners watched quietly. The servers moved silently, and the strange music in the background played on. Mark felt trapped in a nightmare disguised as a restaurant. He realized that this was not just a meal, but a test of courage and perhaps a test of his humanity. Mark took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew he had to make a choice quickly. The alien girl's eyes seemed to pierce his soul, asking for help without words. The server smiled, almost knowing, almost confident that Mark would do what most humans would not. And as Mark reached for the plate again, his hand trembling, a voice in the back of his mind shouted, "Do not touch it. It is alive." The tension in the room grew. Each second stretching longer, Mark's decision would change everything. He felt the weight of the moment, a responsibility heavier than any meal he had ever ordered. The strange restaurant had revealed its secret, and now it was up to Mark to respond. The small alien girl waited, terrified but hopeful, and Mark knew that the next move could save her or doom her. And with that thought, the screen of the restaurant seemed to fade around him, leaving only the plate, the girl, and the question, what would he do next? Mark's hands froze above the glowing plate, his mind refusing to process what he saw. The tiny alien girl lay there, trembling, her eyes wide and shining with fear. He blinked several times, thinking maybe it was some trick of the lights or a hologram. But then her fingers twitched again, weakly reaching toward him, and a small whimper escaped her lips. Mark felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He looked around at the diners, but they continued eating calmly, their faces showing no surprise, as if seeing a live alien girl on a plate was normal here. The server, hovering beside him with its 4 arms folded, neatly smiled softly. "Are you ready to begin?" it asked, voice smooth and almost soothing. Mark shook his head, trying to find words. I don't understand. She's alive." The server's smile did not falter. "She is the freshest you can find," it said. "Your choice, human." Mark's stomach turned, a mix of horror and disbelief making him feel sick. He realized that this restaurant did not just serve exotic food, it served living creatures, and the diners accepted it. Mark pushed the plate back, his mind racing for a way to act. He felt trapped, surrounded by strange aliens, with no authority he could call for help. The alien girl's small eyes looked up at him, almost begging, her tiny lips moving in silent whispers. He leaned closer, trying to understand, but the words were alien, impossible for him to translate. Still, the meaning was clear. She wanted to live. She wanted help. Suddenly, one of the diners turned to him, a tall alien with shimmering green skin, and spoke in broken English. "Do you want her?" Mark shook his head violently. "No, I want her safe." The alien smiled knowingly and returned to its meal, as if this were all expected. Mark's mind screamed for a solution, but every option seemed impossible. He looked for the emergency exit sign, but the glowing letters were in a language he could not read. Panic started to creep in, his pulse racing. The alien girl stirred again, her hands weakly pushing against the plate. Mark realized she could barely move, and any delay could harm her. He glanced at the other servers moving silently around the restaurant, carrying plates with precision, almost like soldiers in a mission. His fear grew with every second, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. If he did nothing, she could be taken away or worse, harmed. He tried to stand, but one of the servers gently touched his shoulder, holding him in place. "The choice is yours, human," it whispered. Mark swallowed hard, his mind spinning. I can't eat her. I have to save her," he said aloud, almost to convince himself. The server tilted its head, almost approvingly, and floated away, leaving him alone with the tiny girl on the glowing plate. Mark reached slowly, trembling, as if every movement could trigger disaster. The girl's eyes widened as his hand hovered above her, fear mixing with a glimmer of hope. Mark realized she could barely speak, and he could barely understand, but somehow they communicated through glances. He nodded at her, trying to say, "I will help you." She gave a small, weak smile, and that was all the encouragement he needed. Mark looked around the restaurant, noticing the layout for the first time. Hidden doors, narrow corridors, strange control panels along the walls. He realized that escape would not be easy, but he could not hesitate. He lifted the girl carefully, feeling how fragile she was, her tiny body trembling in his hands. The diners seemed to watch silently, some with curiosity, some with indifference. Mark felt their eyes on him, heavy with judgment, and knew that any wrong move could alert the staff. He moved toward the nearest side door, hoping it would lead to safety. A faint alarm sounded somewhere in the distance, making his heart race faster. The servers noticed, their eyes narrowing, and one moved quickly in his direction. Mark ducked behind a table, holding the girl close to his chest. Her small hands clung to him, and he whispered, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." The restaurant was alive with tension, every second stretching longer than the last. Mark spotted another exit, partially hidden behind a curtain. He considered running, but he knew the servers would catch him if he moved too quickly. Instead, he calculated, waiting for the right moment. The girl's tiny eyes followed his every movement, trusting him completely. Mark realized she was counting on him, and he could not fail. The strange restaurant that had seemed exciting only moments ago now felt like a prison, and Mark knew that his actions in the next few minutes would decide not just his fate, but the girl's life. The alarm grew louder, and the servers moved faster, their multi-armed forms gliding silently across the floor. Mark gritted his teeth. Prepared to act, he whispered, "Hold on. We are getting out of here." The alien girl nodded weakly, her trust in him giving him courage. Mark took a deep breath and stepped toward the hidden door, careful not to make a sound. The moment felt suspended in time, the tension almost unbearable, and as the server approached from the corner, Mark knew the true test of courage had begun. The restaurant had revealed its darkest secret, and now it was up to him to save a life. Mark pressed the tiny alien girl close to his chest, feeling her trembling against him. Every step he took echoed softly on the metallic floor, and he prayed no one would notice. The hidden door he had spotted seemed so close, yet every second stretched endlessly. His heart pounded as he glanced behind him, the multi-armed server gliding silently, closing the distance. The girl's small hands clutched his shirt, her eyes wide with fear, and Mark realized she was trying to speak. Her tiny lips moved, whispering words he could not understand, but her meaning was clear. "Please, save me." Mark nodded. "I will, I promise," he whispered, though his voice sounded small and uncertain. In the vast restaurant, he knew that promises alone would not protect her. That action was the only answer. The servers moved closer, their eyes cold and precise, scanning the room as if reading his every thought. Mark ducked behind a glowing table, shielding the girl with his body. He could see the other diners watching, some with curiosity, some with silent amusement. It was as if the restaurant itself was alive, a silent predator observing its prey. The alien girl's voice grew urgent, her small hands pushing against his chest, trying to direct him toward the side door. Mark followed her silent guidance, marveling at her courage despite her fear. He realized she understood the restaurant better than he did, knew its paths and weaknesses. "Lead the way," he whispered, keeping his eyes on the servers. Every movement had to be careful, every step calculated. One wrong move and the girl could be taken, or worse, harmed. Mark saw a narrow corridor behind the curtain, dimly lit, almost invisible. He edged toward it, his body tense, every muscle ready to react. The girl pointed with a tiny finger, her eyes urging him faster. The server paused for a moment, tilting its head as if sensing something. Mark froze, his breath caught in his throat. The tension in the room was unbearable, every second stretching longer than the last. He felt the girl's heartbeat against his chest, rapid and scared, and it fueled his determination. Suddenly, another server appeared from the far side, moving silently toward them. Mark's mind raced, thinking quickly, searching for a distraction. He noticed a nearby display of glowing dishes. Delicately balanced, with one swift movement he nudged a plate, sending it clattering to the floor. The sound echoed, metal and glass striking together loudly. The server flinched, and for a moment Mark and the girl had a chance. He seized it, stepping into the narrow corridor, the girl's small body safe in his arms. The corridor was tight, walls glowing faintly, and the air smelled metallic and cold. Mark moved carefully, keeping the girl close, feeling her small hands grip his shirt tightly. Her eyes looked up at him, full of fear and trust. And he knew he could not fail. Every step felt dangerous. the silence broken only by the soft hum of the restaurant machinery. Mark realized they were far from safe, that the restaurant had layers, hidden paths, and surveillance. The girl whispered again, her tiny voice urgent, pointing toward a further door at the end of the corridor. Mark nodded, following her guidance, praying they would make it. Behind them, faint footsteps echoed, the servers gaining ground. Mark's pulse raced, his mind searching for solutions. He noticed a ventilation hatch slightly open above, and a narrow ledge along the wall. It was risky, but it might lead to safety away from the watchful eyes. He looked at the girl. "Can you climb a little?" he asked, and she nodded weakly, trusting him completely. Carefully, he lifted her toward the ledge, her small hands gripping the wall, her body trembling. The server below paused, seemingly confused by their sudden move. Mark followed quickly, balancing carefully on the narrow ledge, the girl's tiny weight in his arms. The corridor stretched before them, narrow and dimly lit, a hidden path he never would have noticed without her guidance. He realized she had survived in this environment before, learned the secrets of the restaurant, and now she was saving him as much as he was saving her. The tension in his chest eased slightly as they moved silently, shadows falling over their faces, but danger was still near. The servers had not given up, and Mark knew that any mistake could cost them both dearly. The girl whispered again, pointing to a faint light at the end of the corridor. Mark squinted, seeing the glimmer of a door, slightly ajar, perhaps leading outside. He felt hope rising cautiously, a fragile flame in the darkness. "Almost there," he whispered, though every sound seemed amplified in the narrow space. The girl's tiny body pressed closer to him, her fear evident, yet she held on, trusting him completely. Mark took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next. The servers below moved faster now, realizing their prey was escaping, and as Mark reached for the doorknob, his hand trembling, he knew this moment would change everything. The tiny alien girl looked up at him, her eyes shining with hope and fear. Mark met her gaze, feeling a bond forming in that instant. He realized that he was not just saving a life, he was choosing to do what most humans would never dare. The restaurant was no longer just a place for food. It was a test of courage, of morality, and of heart. And Mark knew that the choices he made in the next seconds would define him forever. The door creaked slightly as he pushed it, the faint glow from outside spilling into the corridor. Freedom seemed close, yet danger still loomed, and with a final glance at the servers closing in, Mark whispered, "Hold on, we are almost out." Mark pushed the door open carefully, the faint glow of the corridor spilling into the station beyond. The alien girl clung to his chest, trembling, but her small eyes shone with hope. He stepped into the wide hallway, dimly lit with blue and orange lights, the air filled with a low hum of machinery. The station seemed quiet, almost empty, yet Mark knew danger lurked in every shadow. He glanced behind, seeing the servers emerging from the restaurant, their multiple arms moving swiftly, precise and deadly. Mark's pulse raced, his mind calculating. "The best path," the alien girl whispered softly, pointing toward a narrow maintenance passage almost hidden behind a stack of crates. He nodded, trusting her instincts, and moved quickly, stepping lightly to avoid making noise. The servers noticed them and began to split, moving to block the exits. Mark realized this would not be easy, that every second mattered. He felt the girl's tiny hands gripping him tighter, her body trembling with fear. They turned a corner, entering the maintenance passage, the walls tight and metallic. Mark kept low, careful not to make noise, the alien girl leaning against him for balance. The passage was narrow, forcing him to move slowly, but he noticed ventilation ducts along the wall, just large enough for a small person. The girl's eyes lit up, and she whispered again, pointing toward a hatch above. Mark realized she had escaped this way before, knew the station better than he did. He lifted her gently, guiding her into the first duct, her tiny body disappearing into the narrow space. Mark paused for a moment, listening. The server's footsteps echoed in the corridor, searching for them. He followed quickly, squeezing into the duct, careful not to make a sound. The air was tight and warm, the hum of the station muffled. The girl's small hands guided him through twists and turns, her knowledge saving them from traps and dead ends. The duct opened into another corridor, this one larger, filled with machinery and storage crates. Mark stepped out slowly, scanning. For danger, the alien girl whispered, pointing toward a service elevator. He realized it might take them to a less monitored area, possibly even outside the station. Mark moved quickly, but quietly, keeping close to walls and shadows. The servers were gaining on them, their movements precise, unrelenting. Suddenly, one server appeared in front of them, blocking the corridor. Mark froze, the alien girl clutching him tightly. The server tilted, its head observing them, its many eyes cold and calculating. Mark realized he had to act, and act fast. He noticed a stack of crates to the side, tall but unstable. He kicked the crates carefully, making them topple with a loud crash. The server jumped back in surprise, and Mark and the girl darted past. They reached the service elevator, the control panel glowing faintly. Mark pressed the button for the lowest level, his hands shaking. The elevator doors opened slowly, and they stepped inside. The alien girl pressed herself against him, her eyes wide and fearful. The doors closed just as a server reached the elevator, tapping on the glass. Frustrated, Mark exhaled, but he knew this was only a temporary safety, not freedom. The elevator descended slowly, the hum of machinery vibrating. Through the floor, the girl whispered again, pointing toward a hatch at the back of the elevator. Mark opened it, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel leading out of the station. He lifted her carefully, helping her through the opening. They slipped inside, moving quickly. The station's bright lights faded behind them, replaced by dim emergency lighting. Mark realized they were in an older part of the station, less monitored, but more dangerous due to unstable flooring and exposed wires. They moved cautiously, navigating the dim corridors, the girl pointing out weak floor panels and loose cables. Mark followed, amazed at her knowledge, realizing she had survived here before, alone. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed. Through the station, red lights flashing, the servers were on high alert, their voices calling out. Mark's heart pounded, but he kept moving, trusting the girl to guide him. She led him to a small hatch in the floor, barely noticeable. He opened it and helped her down first, then followed himself. The tunnel below was dark, filled with the smell of machinery oil and dust. Mark moved carefully, the alien girl guiding him through twists and turns. Every sound echoed, every movement risky. He realized the station was like a labyrinth, designed to trap those who did not know its secrets. But the girl's knowledge gave them an advantage, a way to escape. Mark felt a sense of determination, knowing he could not fail her now. They reached a large maintenance room filled with old equipment and crates. Mark glanced around, searching for an exit. The alien girl pointed to a small service door at the far end. He moved quickly, feeling the weight of responsibility. Behind them, he could hear the faint sounds of pursuit. The servers methodical and relentless. Mark lifted the girl slightly, helping her climb over crates and cables. Finally, they reached the service door, and he pushed it open carefully, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. Mark took a deep breath, holding the girl close. They were not safe yet, but they had survived the first part of the chase. He realized that their journey was far from over. The station was vast and the servers would not give up easily, but for the first time he felt a flicker of hope. The alien girl looked up at him, her small eyes shining, and Mark knew that together they could face whatever came next. Mark and the alien girl moved cautiously through the dim corridor. Every step echoed faintly, and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on him. The station seemed silent, but Mark knew better. Danger was never far, and the servers would not give up so easily. He glanced at the girl, noticing the determination in her eyes despite her size and fear. She seemed ready to face whatever came. As they turned a corner, a shadow moved ahead, blocking their path. Mark tensed, ready to react. A tall figure emerged, cloaked in dark clothing with a device attached to its arm. The figure raised a hand slowly, signaling them to stop. Mark froze, unsure if this was another enemy or a potential ally. The alien girl whispered urgently, Pointing at the figure, her eyes communicated what words could not. "We might need help." The figure stepped closer, speaking in a low, gravelly voice. "I can help you escape, but I am not your friend," it said. Mark felt a shiver run down his spine, but he understood the truth in those words. Sometimes survival required alliances. Even with dangerous beings, he glanced at the girl, who nodded slightly. Trusting him to make the choice, Mark swallowed, knowing that one wrong decision could end them both. "Why should we trust you?" Mark asked, his voice firm but cautious. The figure tilted its head, eyes glowing faintly under the dim light. "Because I know how to get out of this station, and the servers fear me," it said. Mark considered the risk, then nodded slowly. He had no better options, and the girl's safety depended on quick decisions. The figure motioned them to follow, moving quickly but silently. Mark stayed close, the alien girl holding his hand tightly, her small fingers gripping him like a lifeline. They moved through a maze of corridors, the figure leading confidently. Mark noticed the alien girl's eyes widen as they passed areas she had not shown him before. She whispered softly, "They won't follow here." Mark understood, realizing that this figure had insider knowledge. The corridors were narrower, filled with vents and old machinery. It was a dangerous path, but it seemed to be their only chance. Suddenly, the sound of mechanical movement echoed behind them. The servers had discovered their escape and were moving fast. Mark's heart pounded as they rushed forward. The cloaked figure led them to a large chamber filled with glowing pipes and tubes. He paused, pointing to a large vent at the far end. "This will take you to the lower levels," the figure said. Mark nodded, lifting the girl carefully, guiding her toward the vent. The alien girl slipped inside first, disappearing into the darkness. Mark followed quickly, squeezing through the tight space. The vent was narrow and cold, metal pressing against his shoulders. He felt the girl's tiny hands push him forward from ahead. They moved silently, the sound of pursuit faint, but persistent. Mark realized that every second counted. Every mistake could be deadly. The vent opened into another corridor, dimly lit and abandoned. Mark glanced around, seeing remnants of old machinery and crates scattered about. The alien girl pointed toward a hatch in the floor. He opened it, helping her climb down first, then followed himself. The space below was dark and narrow, filled with cables and pipes. Mark moved carefully, trusting the girl's guidance. She seemed to know every twist and turn, every weak floor panel and loose wire. As they progressed, Mark felt a strange tension in the air. The cloaked figure had not followed them, leaving only faint traces behind. Mark realized that alliances in this station were fragile and dangerous. They had gained an advantage, but it could vanish in a moment. The alien girl looked up at him, her small eyes filled with trust and determination. Mark knew he could not fail her now. Suddenly, a soft alarm echoed through the tunnels. The servers were aware of their presence, moving faster and more aggressively. Mark's heart raced as they reached a large chamber with multiple exits. He paused, scanning the area, calculating their options. The alien girl whispered, pointing toward a faint light in the distance. Mark understood, knowing that it might lead to freedom or into another trap. He took a deep breath, feeling the girl's tiny hands gripping his shirt. "Stay close," he whispered, moving forward. They navigated the chamber carefully, avoiding traps and unstable flooring. The sound of pursuit grew louder, and Mark realized that the servers were relentless. But he also realized that with the alien girl's guidance, they had a chance. They moved through the last few corridors, the glow of the exit growing brighter. Mark's heart surged with hope, and he knew that their dangerous alliance, their courage, and their quick thinking had brought them this far. The alien girl glanced up at him, her small smile faint but full of relief. Mark smiled back, feeling a bond forming between them. He realized that in this station, survival required courage, trust, and sometimes dangerous alliances, and for the first time he believed that they might make it out alive. Mark and the alien girl moved quickly through the dim corridors. Every corner seemed to hide danger, every shadow a possible threat. The station's hum grew louder, the lights flickering. They could feel the presence of the servers getting closer, their movements precise, relentless. Mark's heart pounded, but he knew that hesitation could cost them both their lives. He glanced down at the girl, her small hands gripping his tightly, her eyes wide with fear and determination. Ahead, the corridor split into multiple paths, some leading to dead ends, others possibly to safety. Mark paused, calculating. The alien girl pointed silently toward the left path, her instincts guiding them. He followed, trusting her knowledge of the station. As they moved, he could hear the faint clanking of mechanical arms behind them. The servers had almost caught up, and he knew this confrontation was inevitable. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a large chamber. Dimly lit by flickering lights, Mark realized this was a central hub, full of machinery and control panels. The servers appeared from multiple directions, surrounding them. Mark's pulse raced, but he stood firm, shielding the girl. With his body, the alien girl whispered urgently, pointing toward a narrow exit at the far side. They had only one chance, one path to freedom. Mark knew he had to act fast. He grabbed a loose pipe from the ground, swinging it toward the nearest server. The metal hit with a loud clang, staggering the mechanical creature. The girl took the opportunity to dart toward the exit. Mark followed closely, deflecting another server's attack with the pipe. The sound of clashing metal echoed through the chamber. He realized the fight was not just for escape, but for survival itself. One server lunged from above, its multiple arms reaching for him. Mark ducked and rolled, grabbing a control lever nearby. He pulled it forcefully, activating a magnetic field that temporarily disabled the server's limbs. The mechanical creature crashed to the floor with a heavy thud, sparks flying. The girl ran past, her tiny legs moving swiftly. Mark caught up, breathing heavily, guiding her toward the narrow exit. The corridor beyond the chamber was darker, the lights flickering. They moved quickly but cautiously, knowing the servers could recover at any moment. Mark noticed weak floor, panels, and exposed wiring. He held the girl close, making sure she didn't stumble. Behind them, he could hear the servers rebooting, their movements growing faster and more aggressive. The tension in the air was thick, every sound amplified. In the silence as they reached the exit, a massive server appeared, blocking the path. Its eyes glowed red, and it let out a low mechanical roar. Mark froze for a moment, assessing the danger. The alien girl tugged at his hand, whispering urgently. He realized they had no choice but to fight through. Mark swung the pipe with all his strength. Striking the server's joints, the mechanical creature staggered but did not fall. Thinking quickly, Mark noticed a panel above the server, wires exposed and sparking. He climbed onto a nearby crate, pulling the girl with him. They positioned themselves carefully. Mark grabbed a loose cable, throwing it over the server. The sparks flew, the electrical charge hitting the server directly. It let out a mechanical screech, stumbling backward. The alien girl jumped, using the moment to push the server into a nearby wall. It crashed with a deafening clang, finally incapacitated. Breathing heavily, Mark and the girl ran through the remaining corridor. The exit was just ahead, a faint light glowing at the end. They could hear the faint alarms and the frustrated movements of the remaining servers. Mark held the girl close, whispering reassurances. The station seemed to groan and shake as if it too was aware of their imminent escape. The lights flickered, violently, sparks flying from broken machinery. Finally, they reached an emergency hatch leading to a maintenance airlock. Mark pushed it open, the cold air from outside rushing in. The alien girl gasped, her small body shivering but filled with relief. Mark followed, stepping into the open area, the station looming behind them. The servers could not follow through the narrow airlock. Trapped inside the station, Mark and the girl collapsed against the wall, catching their breath. For the first time, they allowed themselves to relax. The danger was not completely gone, but they had survived the final confrontation. The alien girl looked up at Mark, her eyes filled with gratitude and awe. Mark smiled, realizing that their bond had grown stronger through the trials. They had faced almost certain death, and yet together they had overcome it. The station behind them hummed and flickered, a silent reminder of the dangers they had escaped. Mark helped the girl to her feet, her tiny hands gripping his fingers tightly. He knew they still had challenges ahead, but for now they had each other. The alien girl whispered softly, a faint smile on her lips. Mark understood, knowing that their journey was far from over. But in this moment, they were safe, victorious. In a fight that had seemed impossible, together, they had survived, and together, they would face whatever came next. Mark and the alien girl stood outside the station, the cold wind hitting their faces. The distant stars sparkled above, a reminder of how far they had come. For a moment, they just breathed, feeling the weight of their journey slowly lift. The alien girl looked around, her tiny body shivering, but her eyes filled with wonder. Mark smiled, noticing her awe, knowing that the nightmare inside the station was finally behind them. He helped her walk toward a small shuttle waiting nearby, its engines humming softly. Mark glanced at the station, its dark silhouette looming. The memories of the servers, the traps, and the danger surged in his mind, but he pushed them aside, focusing on the present, on the safety of the girl. She held his hand tightly, her trust in him absolute. Mark realized that their bond was not just about survival anymore. It was about connection, friendship, and courage. As they boarded the shuttle, the alien girl glanced back at the station. Her eyes reflected fear, relief, and a strange sense of closure. Mark noticed her trembling, and he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. She nodded, a faint smile forming. For the first time, she felt a freedom she had never known, a freedom that was more than physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and real. The shuttle lifted off slowly, leaving the station behind. Mark piloted carefully, glancing at the girl from time to time. She had not said much during the escape, but her silence spoke volumes. Her gratitude, her fear, her relief, all mixed into a complex expression that tugged at Mark's heart. He felt a strange pride, not just for surviving, but for keeping her safe. The galaxy seemed quieter from this distance, the chaos of the station fading away. Mark allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction, a feeling he had not experienced in a long time. The alien girl finally spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. Mark shook his head, smiling. "No, we did this together," he said. She nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Even in the darkest moments, they had supported each other, their courage intertwined. Mark felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of accomplishment that went beyond survival. He realized that sometimes, the real victory was in trust, in courage, and in finding allies in unexpected places. The shuttle moved through the stars, leaving the danger behind. The alien girl curled slightly, resting her head against Mark's shoulder. He felt her small hand grip his arm, a silent reassurance, a promise of trust. Mark looked forward, imagining a future where danger would be replaced by peace. He knew it would not be easy, but for the first time, hope felt real, tangible, and possible. The alien girl looked up at him, her eyes reflecting curiosity, wonder, and a quiet excitement. Mark smiled, realizing that this small being had taught him more than he could have imagined about courage, trust, and survival. As the shuttle entered a calmer sector of the galaxy, Mark allowed himself to reflect. They had faced impossible odds, fought relentless enemies, and survived traps designed to kill them, and yet here they were, alive and free. The alien girl whispered softly, "Do you think we will ever be safe?" Mark looked at her, his eyes steady. "I think as long as we are together, we can face anything," he said. She smiled faintly, a small but genuine gesture. For the first time, she felt hope, not just for survival, but for life, adventure, and belonging. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, each one a possibility, a promise, a future waiting to be discovered. Mark piloted carefully, glancing at the girl, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. They had escaped the station, defeated the servers, and survived the impossible. But more importantly, they had learned that courage, trust, and connection mattered more than anything else. The alien girl looked out the window, her small form bathed in starlight. Mark realized that her life had changed forever. and so had his. Together, they would navigate the galaxy, facing dangers, discovering wonders, and protecting each other. Finally, the shuttle moved toward a distant planet, its surface glowing softly in the starlight. Mark felt a sense of relief, knowing that for now, they would find safety, warmth, and perhaps a new beginning. The alien girl looked at him, her eyes filled. With trust and gratitude, Mark smiled, feeling a quiet joy that no danger or fear could ever erase. The journey had been long, terrifying, and full of uncertainty, but the end, freedom, was real, and it was theirs. Mark held her hand gently, guiding her toward the new world ahead. Together, they had survived. Together, they would thrive. And for the first time, the stars did not seem so cold, but full of promise, hope, and endless adventure.